Could you type something on the chat? Just hi, hello, Luis. Okay, so apparently, hi, hello. Hello, hi, G. Okay, hi, hello. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here to be talking about this. That was something very dear to me. So before we actually begin, I'm just gonna introduce myself. My name is Carolina, and I've been working for Cultura Inglesa for 8 years, around 8 years. Specific educational needs is something I've been interested in, but it's not my area of, I don't really have a degree on it, but it's something I've been interested in, and I hope you are too. Maybe this is why you're here. Yes, but the idea is actually to talk about things that we can get from this experience into our everyday practice. Okay, so wow, so many people from so many places. Peru. Okay, awesome. Hello, hello. Okay, so I'm gonna be starting now. Hi. Well, so my agenda for the day is basically to talk about the teaching context in which I was in while teaching this specific student, all the ideas for classroom management that helped me and that might help everybody else as well. Some of the teaching practices I tried. The idea of assessment, that was one of my main worries. And then what happened at the end of the term, both with the student and also myself. Okay? So I'll be asking some questions during the... Yes, Margaret, this will be recorded, okay? So if you have any questions, I'll let you know when to ask them, but I will also be asking some questions during the presentation, okay? So here we go. First, I'm going to talk about the context, yes? So basically, in July last year, I saw a student. I saw a woman, actually. I didn't know that she would be a student. She was in a wheelchair, one of those motorized wheelchairs, and she needed some help to go to the toilet. So it was very graphic. She needed to get out of the chair to go to the toilet. And I started to see her every day in the school. So that already made somewhat of an impression on me. And then I heard that she had taken part in a demo lesson. Yes. And the result was not very good. She cried afterwards. She didn't feel welcomed by the group. The group didn't really understand what she was saying. There were some communication barriers. And overall, my impressions were, oh my God, who is going to teach this person? Because it sure seemed like it was going to be difficult. I'm not going to say challenging. It felt like it would be difficult to teach a student like her. So what happened was that throughout July, I had that impression, and in August, my manager told me, this is Paola, and she's going to be your student. So imagine, my feelings were all over the place. So I would like to ask you, could you type on the chat, what would you feel if you had all this context and you heard, okay, so she's going to be your student. What would you feel? Christiane says she would feel afraid, yes, scared, pressured. I felt petrified, yes, worried. a great challenge in my hands. Astonished, insecure, surprised. Yes. Yeah, I think I felt all of these things. What I chose to put here, I felt afraid. I felt somehow frustrated that I had to deal with that on top of everything else, and a little bit overwhelmed. So not good feelings, to be honest. But then I decided, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with it. So I'm gonna have to take some actions. So before the beginning of the classes, I decided to take some actions, 2 actions to be honest. So I went after her medical report to understand whatever was happening with her, what were her limitations, etc. Turns out the medical report was not much of a help. It was 1 page long, and it basically talked about the visible things. It talked about her movement impairment, and also the the communication. So her voice, the way that it could be difficult to understand what she was saying, and that was visible. So the medical report didn't really help. I decided then to enroll in a course that was being offered by my company, that was called Formação de Professores, Fundamentos para a Educação Inclusiva. Yes. But then I was still worried about some things. What do you think was my main worry? What do you think I was mostly worried about? Could you type on the chat? What do you think I was like the first thing? Oh, and lessons hadn't started yet. The other students, communication, the students. Her reaction after your class. Yes, I was afraid of that. Yes. How to grade her. Guys, you're awesome. You're very spot on. My 2 main concerns were group cohesiveness. So basically, the other students, what would I say to them? How would they react, etc. And her assessment. Was she learning? Wasn't she learning? What could I expect from the student that the medical report was not saying much about? Okay, then lessons started, and I got to know the group. They were A1 students, 20 adult learners, okay? Yes, Gassan said I was worried about the context in general. Yes, I definitely was. I am very anxious, so I was very worried. So I got to know the students. They were very nice, studying on Mondays and Wednesdays at the evening, yes. They came from different backgrounds. Some of them were with a scholarship. And also there was lots of excitement and fear because it was the first time they were studying English. So everybody was kind of all over the place with excitement and a little bit of fear of their first lesson, their second lesson, so on and so forth. Yes, it was really, really challenging. And then the student itself, that's how she would present herself, okay? She would say that her name is Paola, 36 years old. She's a Libras teacher. She's also a dancer. She dances, or she used to dance before the pandemic, every Sunday at Paulista Avenue. And also a singer. She's part of the Subway band here in São Paulo. So this is how she would present herself. And I mean, not what you expect from a student who is in a wheelchair. and has cerebral palsy. So she would present herself. She would say like, oh, I'm Paola, I'm 36 years old, I'm a Libras teacher, I'm a dancer, and I'm a singer. She was really active, you know, like all of these amazing things about her. And something that came to my mind when I started listening to her is that she was really empowered. So basically what I got to know is that her mom told her that she was not her disability, and she grew up knowing that she could do whatever she wanted, she could be whoever she wanted, and she had those motorized wheelchairs, so she could go anywhere she wanted. She yes, very smart mom. So she would go anywhere. Obviously, it was very challenging, and I had the experience of seeing her on the street afterwards, and she uses her wheelchair in the middle of the car, so quite dangerous. But she could do it. And so she would go to band practice, she would go to dance practice. There were videos of her dancing and singing. And also, she said that she was a Libras teacher. Okay? That was her job, her main job. With time, I came to realize that other than empowered, not other, but also, yes, yes, Luis, she was also hurt. Yes, so with time, I realized that that she was really hurt basically by society and her limitations. And during class, there were some moments of tantrums, crying. So all of these feelings that they would arise during class. And then thinking about this, Vygotsky says something about it, yes? Vygotsky will mention two disabilities, primary and secondary disabilities. Primary disability would be the organic one. So the fact that she couldn't walk, for instance. And secondary disability would be everything that was caused by the negative social factors. So the idea that her friends could get much faster to places, that she would have to wait for buses twice as long, that people wouldn't respect her, that every laughter that arose in the classroom, she assumed it was about her. So that was the biggest challenge, to be honest. Okay, so that's the context. What I did, what I decided to do. So first of all, thinking about the classroom management itself, were you trained by the school to teach her? No, I had support of the school. There's a person that will, this person will appear in my presentation, but I wasn't. But then again, she's protected by law. We had to enroll her. She was completely aware of her limitations. So we tried to work with this. What I did was enrolling in a course offered by my company to teach educação inclusiva. Okay? So the classroom management was really an issue for me because of the group. How would they receive her? So I had an idea. I'm going to divide this in two parts. Yeah. So the part of socializing and the dividing of attention, because again, they are basic A1 students, first level. Everybody was desperate for attention. Yes, they really needed the attention. And then I'm going to go over the adaptation on the material and her participation. So first thing, I thought about building something together, and my idea was this: a D-task of willingness. Willingness of what? Willingness of working with her. So what I did with the group for the first 2 or 3 lessons is I proposed a walking around with a song for adults. I know it's tricky, but they bought the idea. And I would just pay attention to whoever approached her. Who were the people who were willing to look over, to pass through her disability and talk to her? And then by doing this, my D-task of willingness, I selected the people who might help me make her feel welcome in the group, who might want to work with her or even teach her, like peer teaching at some points. That was so surprising, so surprising. So many people tried, to talk to her. And then what I did then was the role assignment. Every time someone would work with her, everybody had roles. Yeah, so usually trios, and I gave them different roles, simpler roles for her, so she could develop the task. And it was very interesting because my goal here is that the other students didn't feel like they were producing less just because they were with her. The role assignment was key. Yes. So eventually this led me to autonomy building on her part, because with time and routine, she already knew what she had to do. So if there was a dialogue, she knew she had to try and read things. If some words were colored, she knew she had to substitute with her information. So we designed some of the things that would help her be more autonomous during the lesson. And then the dividing of the attention was basically that I would tell her, I cannot help you now because I am helping Parara. Because she really wanted more attention. She would call me all the time. So I was very, and I would say this loudly so everybody could listen, that I was okay, I've helped you, now I'm gonna help someone else. Because everybody, most of them kind of needed like some kind of validation, especially in the beginning of the course. And then the idea of equity, which is, I know, kind of even fashionable to talk about equity when we talk about specific educational needs. And but it is true. Yeah, she needed some other tools in order to try and perform the same things her colleagues were performing. Yeah, so there were some meetings outside of the classroom as well. Okay, not only in class. I'm going to go over something different. Is there any questions? Are there any questions about this? I see that some people are typing. Nope. Diana is okay. Okay, so if you do at any point, just let me know. Okay. And then looking at her individual production, yeah, so not only the group, but her individual production. There's this quote that talks about what Vygotsky used to say, to have a positive differential approach. So what is it that she could do? Right? I shouldn't be focusing what she couldn't do. So how can I use the things that she could do in class? So I see there's a question here. What is the task of willingness? Where can I find information about? I don't know if this is a real thing. I've made up the name just for this presentation. It was like one of these crazy ideas. My goal with the task was not on language, was on willingness of talking to her. I proposed a task, and students obviously didn't know my goal. There were some questions on the board. They needed to talk about it. It was like a warmer icebreaker, but my hidden agenda was understanding who was willing to talk to her, who was not afraid of her, who was not like, I'm not going to talk to that girl, she's different. So that's what I called here the task of willingness. Okay. Okay. And then, Lilian, I hope, yes, okay, apparently you've got it. Okay. So thinking about her, her individually, what we did, our process was, in the beginning of the class, she had her notebook and she had a pen. But she wanted to take notes of everything. She didn't know what was important for her to take notes of. So basically, her process was taking notes of every single thing that I would put on the board. And that was super duper challenging because she really wanted to take notes. What I did is that I substituted her notebook by printed copies of the presentation. So beforehand, I would just, I would prepare my lesson and I would print the presentation. And this was her material. And then we also migrated from pens to color pencils. Writing anything was very challenging for her. So what I did is I unloaded her I prioritized something else for her to do. So I was focusing on her understanding what I was explaining instead of writing, because of the I chose to prioritize this, her understanding and not the writing. This is why we migrated. So she would basically color the things that were supposed to be highlighted. Rules were kind of ready for her there, simplified. I'm going to give some examples. I'm actually going to show the test that she did, and this might give you a better picture of what I'm talking about. But using the color pencils was amazing, was key, not only for her. I'll give an example how this helped the whole group. And then her oral participation also evolved. Yes, Vanelli, I can definitely share the slides. I'm talking about a woman, 36 years old, with cerebral palsy. And yes, I have worked with autistic disorders. I might mention something, I guess maybe Disal can, I'm not sure. I'll see how I can make this available to you. Okay, so going back here, something that also evolved was her contributions, because first they needed to be encouraged all the time, like, what do you think? What about you? And you, what do you think? And then they became voluntary, which was awesome. So in the lesson about professions, she was all like, and how do you say, how do you say? And that was just amazing. It was one of the very good days. Yes. Oh, and just to make it very clear, it does sound like it was easy, but there were very difficult moments in which I cried, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? This is very challenging, very difficult. Now I get to keep the good part, but at the moment, and this, like, the emotional baggage, it was complicated because her voice, she really needed doctor support, but she didn't have it because she didn't have enough money for the treatment. So every time she would say something, it would kind of become a problem, because if anybody said anything else, she would feel like, oh, they're laughing at me. So this was very complicated. I mean, once she really cried and left the lesson earlier because, I mean, she really felt like people were laughing at her, even though we were trying to make her part of the group. So that was something. Good. So now, thinking about some of the teaching practices other than classroom management techniques. Inside the classroom, the importance of having a role, as I mentioned before. So every student that would sit with her, they had roles. So they knew that they could, okay, so for today, for this task, you're gonna help Paola with, you're gonna read, she's just gonna repeat you, yes? But then they would have different tasks along the class. So the rolling thing is very important. It was a very good tool. Clear instructions and instruction checking. Because if people were sitting with her, she didn't really know how to behave. So she would be talking about something else. And many times people sitting with her would miss the instructions, or they would be busy helping her and would miss something. So the instructions checking, that was key. The clarifying of procedures, what I mean is, when I told students to stand up, they knew why. When I told students to open books, they knew why. So the things that I was proposing for them to do, they knew why. Because why did I do this? Because I wanted to explain to her, but I felt like I am going to explain to everybody. And this made her feel part of the group. And it made very good development for everybody else. Yes. And then really getting to know your students, I mean, whoever was going to work with her or not. Yes, because many of them didn't want to work with her. And then outside of the classroom, I was having some meetings with her. It was once a week, an hour per week. So she would have 2 lessons with the group, and then one weekly meeting with me for an hour. This obviously escalated. So her lesson started at 8:20 p.m. She would arrive in the school at 3 p.m. because she wanted to talk to me, she wanted to talk to the manager, she wanted to talk to anybody who was available. So it became very clear to us that the school, the learning of English was not her only goal, but also having a place to socialize, having a place to be, just to really be herself and be respected somehow. So she would just stay there. Sometimes she would just stay there like by herself, or maybe talk to the canteen lady, but she would arrive like at 3 p.m. like most of the lessons. And then what happened is that with trust, when she finally became to trust that I really wanted to help and etc., she Maria Angela, it was kind of therapy for her. She needed to talk to people. Yes. But obviously I had many things to do, and my manager too, and the secretary staff too. So it was kind of insane when she arrived, because we didn't really have time to be with her, and you kind of wanted to be with her because it was very nice. Actually, when you were alone with her, she was amazing to talk to, but most of the time you didn't have time, or you weren't in the mood to do that. Did she have to pay for them? Yes. So no, the extra meetings you say. No, she didn't, because when we have specific educational needs, or even when some regular students will have some a hard time understanding something, they might request these support sessions. Yes, in which usually we send stuff for them to do, and then we correct, we check for doubts, this kind of thing. Okay, so moving on. Are you sure it was not her mom? Oh, yeah. So she's 37 now, but she was 36 years old. And her mom, okay, so I don't know exactly her whole family history, but she also had another sister with the same disability, but her sister was in a worse condition. So her mom spent lots of time with the sister and not with her. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I guess I wasn't really trying to be a very good teacher. I was really just trying to do the best I could, because I was really scared and afraid, and I cried. And I mean, it was like a hurtful process for me. Like there was really bad days in which she would cry in class, you know. So it was challenging, but that like, there's a limit to what you can do. A weekly meeting of an hour and saying hi to her on the corridor, it didn't seem like that much at the time. Okay. So the impact on the group, that was amazing. So I started to adapt stuff, and I started to speak not I'm not going to say that I speak slower, but I included some extra controlled practices that ended up helping everybody else. And one thing that is like a gem of this experience was this: she didn't know what was the difference between a vowel and a consonant. So I devised color coding for her. Yes. So I really colored stuff. In my presentation, they would have the colors. And then one day I said, okay, so I'm just gonna take a piece of paper for students to practice, A, N, since they are A1 students. At the end of so I gave everybody the piece of paper and also some colored pencils. And everybody did the activity as she had been doing it. At the end of the class, 2 students came to me and they were like, "Teacher, I finally understood what you were saying by vowel and consonant and sound and etc. And because of the visuals, because of the colored pencils." And it's like having a specific educational needs student inside the class. It gave me like this red flag of, okay, I need to pay attention to her, but then I was paying attention to everybody else, and this ended up helping. So all of the adaptations that were meant for her ended up helping the other students, and that was priceless, actually. So thinking about assessment, she was not really not stupid. She knew that she might, that it was possible for her to be left behind by the group. So she really worried about not keeping up with the group. So she would ask all the time, mas eu tô bem? Am I okay? Is this enough? What should I do? What can I study this? Can I study that? So when focusing on her progress, I tried to tell her what I was seeing. That basically there was a difference in timing to digest information. So most of the students, I'm generalizing here, they would need 1, 2, 3 lessons, and she would need more. And also, I was offering the meetings. There were a variety of resources. So the color pencils, gestures, realia, moving of the mouth and calling attention to my mouth, what I was doing. So all the yes, deaf people can learn through label reading. And I guess that this really helped her because according to her, she's a Libras teacher. So maybe she will have some experience with that, with the label reading. And then I'm going to go to peer support because there was this special student in class, Tali. She treated Paola as one of her friends. She would go like, I know that you know. Come on, contribute. Come on, we want to hear from you. So she would, encourage. So this peer support was amazing, and the idea of showing that the other peers also had some limitations. Because what happens is everybody, they have limitations, obviously, but we can only see the limitations in the disabled people in a way, because they are the visible things, what was in her medical report, basically. And the progress, because it was there, and I could definitely see it when she finally took the test, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But was I seeing it? Because I was desperate. I was like, oh, she's not learning. Oh my God, what am I going to do? She cannot memorize grammar. She cannot pronounce stuff. I was, like, really, really, really. And that was, so I was taking the course, as I mentioned, the Educação Inclusiva, and I would talk to the tutor, like, please, I need some ideas on assessment. How can I assess it? So it was very hard for me to see that she was indeed making progress. And then it came the question, did she really need more exposure? Did she really need that extra session? Maybe not. Maybe just all the changes and adaptations I was doing during class, they might have helped her already. But what the individual sessions gave her was a place for her. Someone to listen to her, someone to understand that she really wanted to learn English, even though she is disabled. Yes. So what I worked with her a lot is this very cliche sentence that made lots of sense for both her and me, to focus on the progress, yes, and not perfection. So do not compare yourself to the other ones. There are two questions here. I'm just going to check. Is she still your student? No, unfortunately, she's not my student. If not, what about our actual teacher? Okay, so she's not a student anymore. And the reason why she's not a student anymore is that I know where she lives, because she lives in the neighborhood, but she didn't come anymore. But I'm not really certain about reasons why we did call her and etc. But as she had lots of emotional baggage, it might have something to do with that. And we were never able to talk to her mother. That was something that bugged me a lot. I really wanted to talk to her mother. I never could. So many things to take into account, and even some financial problems that I don't know the extent of this financial problems. She would mention one thing here and there, but did she realize her materials were different? Yes, she knew her materials were different. She didn't. She never complained about the materials, and what happened in the end is that I started to copying some of her materials to everybody else. So because of her, everybody else was getting some kind of extra material. What about offering her private? I never thought about that, but actually she disappeared before I could even come to that possibility. And I think someone else is asking a question, but moving on. About the assessment, I'm gonna show you her test. Okay, so before giving her a test, and mind you, I had never had any experience with this kind of educação inclusiva. Yes. So I didn't know what to do. So before the test, I was worried about the font size. I was worried about how she would answer stuff. Was she gonna write? Because I knew writing was tricky for her. Would I have to translate stuff? I was really worried about how would the answers come about, and the timing. Would she be able to take the test at the same time as everybody else? Probably not. And strategies, was she able to, I didn't know if she had learned the strategies I was trying to teach her. I was really in doubt because I didn't know. I mean, I don't have a justification of why I was so desperate about these things, but I just didn't know. I wasn't sure. But then, with the help of the tutor that I mentioned, Karina Nazari, I adapted the test. I adapted how she was going to answer things. But what I realized is that, not what I realized, but what was really interesting is her processes during the taking of the test. Oh, you wouldn't imagine. So during the test, like, I don't know if you can see this, it's quite small, but it's what happened. I put post-its describing what happened while she was taking the test. So it says like that I played the audio twice and that she was in doubt. The only question she was in doubt of is the one that she got wrong. All of the questions she got right. This is a listening passage, okay? This is a listening exercise. All of the questions she got right, she was certain, super certain. She heard them like, this is it. So she was super duper certain. And her reaction to when she could understand things was amazing, because she would light up. You know, I know this. And the only one that she didn't know was number 4. So she was like, okay, I'm just gonna guess it. Exactly like any other student. The support needed. So in this case, I was expecting her to want to listen to these passages like a million times, but she didn't need to. She heard twice and she was okay. And then in the second one, she was sure of the things. What happened is that she did use strategies. She used keywords. So what she would do is she would just confirm, like, name. And then I would go like, yes, your name is Paola. Oh, name. So she would focus on keywords. And then for nationality, her keyword was from. Yes, from. So she knew that when there was a sentence with from, she would be talking about nationality. And what happened is we built lots of things from this, because for the other meetings, the support meetings, I would work with this for her, with the things that I knew she could do. So keywords and things like that. Did you provide the answers of the listening to make it easier? What I did is this part here, it's 2 options. So she needed to color the right option. And here, yes, I provided these things. They are pieces of paper. She would need to glue the pieces of paper into the right place. This is what she did, okay? And then for the reading and use of English, something that happened is that the establishing of the connection. How can I say this? So I needed to establish any kind of connection with her life. So basically, there's a question here. So it's from the reading. It says, what's Claire's nationality and how old is Claire? She didn't know. So I needed to give her some examples. And I told her, Paola, you are 36 years old. I am 30 years old. How old is Claire? And then she would be able to find. So when bringing from her life to the reading, it was easier. So anything that was related to her. So when we were learning family, I had to learn like her family members, so I could use the names. Yes, Carolina, personalization and contextualization. But you see, this is important for everybody, and we kind of know that, but the transformation that happened when I actually used the name of her mom or her stepdad or her sister, her nephew was the love of her life. So using these people, it just made it like lots of difference. And I feel that sometimes we know we should personalize, but then how maybe just using a name, one name for each student, and then eventually I was able to use this with the whole group. So it should be meaningful, it should be relevant, things we know, but then I saw it happening. You know, like this made this concept of teaching English very tangible to me as a teacher. And also the test taking. She had been through university, according to her, not sure if that's true, but she had a bad experience with testing because she had the time she wanted, but the test was not adapted and she didn't have any support. People would just put her inside a room and say, okay, take the test. So when she had this kind of testing, she was very pleased. She really liked it. Okay. So at the end of the term, what happened to her? She ended up being approved. It was like the minimum grade that we ask, but she was producing inside her limitations, so she could carry out a full dialogue of personal information, like with no support whatsoever. The only support she needed was the keywords from the question. So what's your name? Where are you from? And she would know how to answer that. We scheduled a collective feedback at the end of the term. She was there. And this was the best part. We also had an optional potluck. So everybody would bring dishes, and she was the only one who brought a homemade dish. So everybody was like, oh, this is amazing, you did it. That's a pie. It was a chicken pie, and it was very good. So it felt like she ended up feeling part of the group somehow. Yeah, so I was very pleased. And then for me as a teacher, so many takeaways. So the impacts on my practice. Knowing someone's diagnosed, so knowing that she had a cerebral palsy helps, but definitely didn't give me a manual on what to do. You need to look to the student. And so this is, so if you have zero education on how to teach disabled students, we should look at the student. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not going to say that, but that is probably step number one, because knowing that someone is in the autistic spectrum, knowing that someone has Down syndrome, this is like step 0. And then step 1 would probably be look at the student, look at how the student reacts to whatever you propose, look at how the group will, so these things. And this helps with everything else, because you don't have to have a disability to not feel welcomed by the group, for instance. Yes. I don't know if I made myself clear. I hope I have. But knowing the diagnosis is like step 0 and move on from there. And then I really didn't know what to do. Really didn't know what to do. I promise you, it was like crazy in the beginning. And I felt like that was a problem to me. Like, oh, I don't know what to do. Come on. And my conclusion is that it's okay to know what to do as long as you're willing to reflect about the things you are doing. Yes, you end up doing. And then the access you aim at providing to your specific educational needs student might help the whole group. What did happen to me? And I wasn't aware that this was happening until I got feedback from some students. So they said like, oh, the coloring thing was very nice, and the printing of things was very nice, and having pieces of paper on our hand to organize sentences really helped. So the other students gave me feedback on the things that I was doing. Yes. And this is something that the tutor from the course, Karina, she says a lot. It's from Vygotsky. Yes, different students will take different paths and detours, and that is more than okay. We just have to respect the paths and detours they're taking. Yes. And then something that happened was that sometimes this student, she would be very mean, to me, to other students. Of course, she had background for this, so she was hurt, as I already mentioned, but she would be mean. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to sometimes feel angry at her, like, oh, I can't believe she did that. That's not right. So one conclusion that I got is that learners with this specific education needs, they are not defined simply by these needs. They're not beings of light somehow. They're humans, and they're not saints, and they have human needs. So they need friendship, they need attention, they need a group, they need to feel part of a community. They need stuff that we need, and sometimes we just go like, oh no, he has Down syndrome, so he's perfect. It's like psychologically, they might be mean, they might be boring, they might be annoying, they might be so many things that we are, right? I mean, and the group, 20 students, they embraced her. She was part of the group. At the end of when she would miss class, they would ask, where is Paola? Why didn't she come? This surprised me, because I was ready to deal with bullying. I was ready to deal with her being left out. I was ready for so many things. I was this is gonna happen for sure, and it didn't. It really didn't. So yes, this surprised me a lot. This was amazing, actually. I don't know if they would talk bad things about her at home, but in class, they were very nice to her. Everybody was very nice to her. I did notice some people that wouldn't want to work with her, but still, if they ended up working, they would respect her. Yes, but then again, sometimes she felt bad about people in general. Okay, good. So I don't know if there are some questions. Let me just see here. Realize, did you provide answers? Yes, I answered this one. There's good teacher actual ones. Yes. How often do you happen to have? Yeah. So the how often I happen to have students with specific needs? Actually, of this magnitude, it was the first time, especially with adults. With adults, I had her and another student with dyslexia. It also taught me quite a bit, but he ended up quitting in the middle of the course. And then I also had some autistic students, but Asperger's, which is more on the social obstacles, not really cognitive obstacles. And I had a Down syndrome student, super duper cute. He was a kid. But his mom is psychologist, so she kinds of know how to deal with many of the things that happen, so she would help a lot. Yeah, so I had the support of the mom, basically. So I'd say that in 8 years that I've been in Cultura, I've had quite a few students with specific needs. And what they all have in common is that you need to take the interest. You need to take the interest. That's it. Yes. Yeah, they shouldn't be discriminated. Yes, there's a video. There's a Down syndrome video. If you're interested in, it's just type on Google, not special needs, and you'll find this video, this amazing video about Down syndrome and how they should never be discriminated. Yeah, thank you. Let me see how many students. Yeah, so I'm not sure about the amount. Yeah, I'm really not a specialist. I'm just telling like one story. I could tell like the other stories, but I feel that I learned the most with this one, because this had this magnitude that really scared me and really put me to work, to be honest. So this is why I chose to tell this story. Okay. Yes. And Mona Lisa, she was angry all the time with people, and she never hit anybody. I don't know if this lady, she cried a lot. She screamed sometimes. So yes, sometimes she would be very angry, and I would just go to her, talk to her, ask her what she wanted. And many times she would just leave. And usually it was in the end of the class, so sometimes it felt like she was just tired, you know. What would you do in a different way? Oh God, I guess I would try to understand her tantrums better, because sometimes it was very difficult to understand. I was in the middle of an explanation and she would shout or say stuff, and that was difficult for me. So I would probably try, and I mean, I didn't disrespect her, but inside I was like, oh, please be quiet, please let me teach. But it was just sometimes she needed to ask the question right away, sometimes she needed the personalization right away. Yes. If you have a chance to host a new student. Yeah, so if I have a chance to host another student, I would definitely pay attention and maybe have a D-task of like using a pen or coloring, because it took me a while to get to evolve from notebook to copies, a pen to color pencils. It was error and try. Oh, sorry, try and error. I guess this is it. There's still some questions. I'm going to put my my references here, okay, and also my email. So if you have any questions, any suggestions, if you want to continue this conversation, I would love to. So just write to me, because I feel like I won't have time to go through everything. Thank you so much for coming, and really, I know there are some of my friends are here, so thank you for taking the time to listen to me as well. Thank you so much. Yes. Now about the presentation. If you want the presentation, could you write to me? Because I'm not sure if Disal can make this available. So if you just drop me a line, I'll send to you for sure. Yeah. So if you want the presentation, just send me an email. I'll send it to you right away. Okay. Guys, thank you. Thank you for staying up to the end. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Good night. Bye. Thank you, Maria Angela. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Bye. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Carlos. You too. Thank you, André. Bye-bye. Oh, thank you, Dina. Bye. Thank you.